Good afternoon. Okay, today we're going to talk about correlational and quasi-experimental design. So, I know very well you already have some background about the definition of correlational study and experimental study, research design. We have been talking about this one during our psychological statistics and previously in our lectures in experimental psychology. Anyway, class, correlational and experimental research design are just two of the many types of research design. Other examples of research design is we have the descriptive research design. We're just going to describe a situation or case under the research study. We also have the case study, wherein in case study we are only focusing in one subject or as much as possible minimal yung subject because this is in-depth study that needs a lot of attention from the researcher. We also have field studies, ethnography, archival study, among others na pinag-aralan natin in our previous lecture. We also have studied about the two types of research design. Number one, we have the qualitative research design, and then we have the quantitative research design. Whereas class, yung qualitative research design is nakafocus sa live experiences of the subject. We're just trying to observe. It doesn't have any mathematical calculation or statistics. It is mainly describing phenomena or subjects of our study. And then we have the quantitative research design, which we really talk about a lot during our past semester or past courses, whereas quantitative research needs mathematical calculations or statistics in order to make conclusion or to make inferences. In here, we really have to gather numerical data in order to analyze the problems so that we could give yes, a very good inferences and conclusions. And subtype nga ng quantitative research design class is itong dalawa. We have the correlational and we have the experimental design. If you could notice, specific yung topic natin for today. May nakalagay dito na quasi-experimental design. Why? Because these two types of quantitative research design are the most common research design na ginagamit ng mga students in undergrad degree, just like you guys. So, bakit natin madalas gamitin yung quasi-experimental design? We're going to know the characteristics of this particular design as we go along with our lecture. So, basically, class, meron tayong dalawang type ng experimental design. The first one is the true experimental design, and the second one is the quasi-experimental design, which quasi-experimental design, without us knowing, is actually what most students are doing as their research project in experimental psychology. So let's move on. In terms of the difference of correlational and quasi-experimental design, we already tackled class in our previous lectures that in correlational, we are only looking for correlation, and basically we are answering questions answerable by yes or no. In correlational study, we are looking for a significant relationship or no significant relationship between or among variables. It's like that if you manage to answer na there is a significant relationship or there is no significant relationship, you're going to stop there. You are not going to be interested what is that factor uh, which causes the two variables to really have correlation, associations, or relationship. An example of this study is that ang age ba ay merong relationship with the increase of our intelligence. So, habang tumatanda ba yung tao, mas lalo ba siyang nagiging matalino? So, if the age increases, is the intelligence also increases? So, what kind of correlations kapag ganun yung nangyari, parehas pataas? We call that class the positive correlation. So, they are affecting one another, but we are not really after what particular factor cause the people to become intelligent as they aged. Because nga, we are just looking for the relationship only, whether positive, negative, or no correlation. But class, if you are interested to know what makes people become more intelligent as they aged, you have to really conduct an experimental study wherein you could use some manipulation of the independent variables in order to prove your assumptions. For example, kaya ba tumatalino ang mga tao? It's because of their gender. Number 2, is it because of their educational background? Number 3, is it because of their socio-economic status? So, those 3 factors, yun yung mga tinatawag natin na treatment condition or mga independent variables that we can actually manipulated or what do you call this? Assigned to our subjects in order to know kung maaapektuhan ba nito yung another variables natin or our dependent variables. So, as you could see, class, in experimental design, we are really digging deeper to find out what really causes the changes in the behavior and what really causes or triggers the effect of one variable to another variable. So, hahanap tayo ng mga pieces of evidence to actually support our conclusion by manipulating our variables, again, using the experimental research design. To understand this more, I have here an example of a correlational study, which is, you could read in here in our slide. Sabi dito, a newspaper headline reads, "Heavy drinkers get lower college grades." Questions are, what would you conclude from this headline and what type of study was this based on? So, basically, class, sinasabi dito na ang dapat nating gamitin for this kind of research studies actually correlational. Number 1, thing na kailangan nating tandaan whether we're going to use correlational or experimental study is yung ethics. Kapag kasi we want to study heavy drinkers as cause of lower grades of college students, it's going to be unethical because you might be labeling this subject or this person based on their characteristics. Like, lasenggo yan, ibig sabihin lagi mababa yung grades niya. O kaya mababa grades niyan kasi lagi yung umiinom. So, we don't want to really create a stigma or stereotype towards these people or against these people because of our study. Another one, class, is if we're going to make, for example, an experimental study, we might harm our subjects by giving them different treatment condition so as to prove our point. For example, meron kang 6 na respondents, okay, i-assign mo sila sa 3 treatment condition. Yung first 2 is going to drink two bottles of liquor in a day. Yung treatment condition 2 mo or yung group 2 mo, bibigyan mo ng 5 na heavy liquor within a day, and then yung pangatlo bibigyan mo ng 10 bote ng liquor in a day. So by doing this kind of study, you are actually violating the ethical principle of protecting your subject against harm. So we cannot really force them in order to prove our point. So in that way, again, unethical siya. So what can we get from this kind of study is we are just going to look for associations or relationship between heavy drinkers, which is our independent variable, and lower or their college grades, which is going to be our dependent variables. So if we could see na kapag pala heavy drinkers, most likely okay, mabababa yung grades nila, we could actually make an influence na yes, it could affect their grades, yes, it is associated with their grades, but we cannot really pinpoint that. Since you are a heavy drinker, ibig sabihin you are about to get low grades all the time. So kapag ganun kasi yung nangyari, again, we are actually stereotyping that person, or we're branding them, or we're giving them labels. Another one, sabi dito sa pinakadulong paragraph, perhaps students drink more because they make lower grades. Pwede kasing it's the other way around. Baka naman ang independent variables dito is yung lower grades. So in an effect, dahil mababa yung grades nila, dumadami yung consume nila ng kanilang heavy liquors. And or perhaps drinking and grades appear related only because they are both related to the degree of student commitment to being in school. And sometimes baka naman kasi kaya heavy drinker sila o kaya sila ay having a lower grades is just because they are not that committed in the school. Kung tutuusin class, you will be realizing na we could actually get a very good result of this study if we're going to make an experiment. Like, kunin natin lahat ng mga bata na laging na-absent sa school, mga bata na mababa yung grades, and then we're going to identify kung ilan kayang bote ng alak yung makukonsume nila in a day. But this kind of experiment are actually, again, unethical, because what's the point of making these people becomes your subject and then giving them or asking them to drink this kind of liquors, where at a common sense, alam naman natin na drinking heavy liquors could actually make people unreasonable and do things na hindi ginagawa ng tao na nasa tamang consciousness, because people who are actually drunk or lasing is actually unconscious and they don't know what they are doing, thus making bad things. So again, kapag ethics ang pinag-uusapan, we should go on in correlational study. Next, people remember concrete words better than abstract ones. So sabi dito, could this finding have come from an experiment? Would it be reasonable to infer that concreteness facilitates memory? So in this kind of experiment, we could actually use an in this kind of study, we could actually use an experimental study. Okay. Why? It's because it's not really harmful. What do we mean by concrete words? These are words like tangible object like electric fan, pillows, chair, computer, laptop. And then when we say abstract ones, these are objects that we cannot see but we could feel. Or these are words or concept that don't have any physical appearance but we tend to believe it, like caring, nurturance, love, hope. So those are abstract ones. So we could actually make an experiment in two different ways. Number one, we call this a between subject design. A between subject design is also called independent sample test. So in here, people are randomly assigned to groups. So one group learns concrete words, the other learns abstract ones to see whether the group learning concrete words or remembers more. The key concept in between subject class is that you have two pairs or two groups which should be assigned in your treatment condition. Like for example, the first group, i-assign mo na pag-aralan lahat ng concrete words, and the other group, i-assign mo na pag-aralan yung mga abstract words, and then you're going to compare the result of their learnings or the result of their activity at the end of the day. So, sinong group yung makaka-remember ng mas marami? Is it the group which shows concrete words or the group which shows the abstract ones? So, kapag again meron kayong dalawang group na inassign mo randomly whether mapupunta siya sa concrete or sa abstract ones, we call that between subject. The other one is what we called the experimental design na within subject design. Ang within subject design class ay ang instance where all participants learn both the concrete and abstract words to see whether individuals learn concrete words better than abstract ones. And within subjects design, you will make all your subject or your respondents experience all the treatment conditions. Hindi mo sila hatiin sa dalawang group. So, lahat ng subject mo ay pag-aaralan ang concrete words. After that, lahat sila naman ay pag-aaralan ang abstract words. And then, you're going to identify which score is higher. Kapag ba which words or which result is higher, yun bang nasa concrete word sila or yun bang nasa abstract word sila. So that is within subject design. Ang maganda sa within subject designs, you will not worry about order sample or hindi ka magwo-worry na sino ba ang ilalagay ko sa group 1 at saka sa group 2. Sino ba ang ilalagay ko under the concrete words or under the abstract ones? Okay? So, within subject kasi, lahat sila ay may pagkakataon may experience ang lahat ng treatment conditions. Whereas, again, sa between subject, okay, you are just going to group them, okay, according to the treatment condition na pag-aaralan nila. Paano? Ulit. Limbawa, may 10 kang respondents. Sa between subject, yung 10 respondents mo, randomly, i-assign mo sila whether mapupunta sa concrete or sa abstract. So, 5 sa concrete, 5 sa abstract. At the end of the day, their score in the activity, i-compare mo so that to know ano yung mas maganda. Okay? Whereas, in within subject design, yung 10 respondents mo, ang gagawin mo, on the first day, yung 10, lahat sila ay mag-undergone in learning using the concrete words. And then the next day, lahat ng 10 ngayon ay mag-aaral naman using the abstract words. And then you're going to compare their result within themselves also. Base dun sa sarili nilang performance during sa concrete compared dun sa performance nila in abstract words. So in this kind of experiment, wala ka namang na-violate na any ethical rules. Okay, wala kang finors. These are basically harmless. Okay, class? So that is between and within subject designs. Next. Pumunta na tayo, class, doon sa experiments and quasi-experiments, which is, sabi ko sa inyo, we're going to really discuss kung ano yung pinagkaiba ng true experiment sa quasi-experiment. Isama na natin yung correlational research design. When we say experimental design or the true experimental design, it is the administration of condition by the researcher. It really helps us to identify the cause and effect of a certain behavior. Pag sinabi nating condition, ito yung nagmamanipulate tayo ng independent variable. As a researcher, meron kang control kung saan mo ilalagay na group or condition yung mga respondents mo. For example, you wanted to know kung gaano ba ka-effective ang isang skincare product. So, kung meron kang 10 participants, bahala ka kung ilalagay mo si participants 1, 3, 5, 7, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 sa skincare product letter A, and the rest na nasa even numbers ilalagay mo sa skincare product letter B. So, you could actually manipulate them. Pwede mo ikaw yung mag-group sa kanila. And then, number 2, we have the quasi-experimental design. Ang quasi-experimental design, it compares group based on pre-existing characteristics. It describes differences. May instances, class, na kapag gumagawa tayo ng experiment, hindi tayo sure na meron talaga tayong control over our subject participants or dun sa ating treatment condition. Pwedeng kapag inilagay natin yung 5 tao under the skincare product 1, and then yung 5 tao dun sa skincare product 2, we are not actually sure if they have what do you call this, similar characteristic in terms of their sensitivity to skincare products. Baka mamaya meron sa kanilang may allergy sa skincare products, merong mild lang ang allergy, merong anong tawag dito, merong mataas yung allergy. So kapag hindi tayo sigurado at hindi natin kayang ma-assure that they have similar characteristic, ang gagawin natin, instead of making a true experimental study, gagawa lamang tayo ng quasi-experimental study. So, in this note, ibig sabihin, ang quasi-experimental is we are not sure whether we can control our independent variables 100%. That is why sabi dito, magde-describe lang tayo ng differences. Based dun sa una nating paliwanag, when we say experimental study, we are into identifying the cause and effect. Pero paano if we are not sure na na-control ba natin yung independent variable? Okay? Pwedeng mag-fail yung activity natin. So, in that note, gawin nating mas lighter, gawin nating quasi-experimental research design. Another one, ginagamit yung experimental design kapag ang independent variable mo ay merong pre-existing characteristics. For example, you wanted to know the difference about the gender, about the effect of gender in the intelligence of the individual. So, kapag ang pinag-uusapan ay gender, hindi mo pwedeng i-randomly assigned ang gender. Like for example, kung lalaki ka, okay, ilalagay kita sa babae. We cannot do that. Meron na talaga silang pre-existing activity. Therefore, hindi mo sila pwedeng i-assign. Ang babae, pipila, group 1, lahat babae. Group 2, lahat lalaki. So, when we have that pre-existing characteristics, we go on with quasi-experimental study. Okay, ulit. Number 1, ang true experiment, kaya mong i-control ang treatment condition. 100% control over treatment condition. Ang true experiment, kaya mong randomize kung saan mo ilalagay ang iyong subject or participants. So, kapag hindi mo kayang i-control ang iyong participants at hindi mo pwede silang basta na lang i-randomize sa iba't ibang treatment condition, ang gagawin po natin is quasi-experimental. Ano pa bukod sa gender? Halimbawa, may specifier na characteristic like professional mathematics teachers. Okay? So, when you say professional mathematics teachers, hindi ka pwedeng basta kumuha lang ng mathematics teachers. So, kung hindi ka sure in their requirements or characteristic, let's go on with quasi-experimental study wherein kukunin natin yung kanilang differences. That is why sa inyong mga experimental study, mostly ang sinasagot po natin is mga null hypothesis like there is no significant difference, there is a significant difference. And then the last one is we have the correlational study. Again, it's just collecting information about a specific behavior, exploring relationships among variables. Ulitin natin class ha, kapag experimental or true experimental, the researcher has a 100% control over the independent variable. Sure siya na kapag ginawa niya yung experiment, ang dahilan ng isang behavior or pagbabago ng isang independent variable is yung kanyang conditions. Okay? And also, in true experimental study, we could actually randomize our subjects. Pwede natin silang ilagay kahit sa anong treatment condition. Pero, pag hindi natin magawa yung dalawang yon, we tend to just do the quasi-experimental study. Instead of identifying the cause and effect, we're just going to describe the differences among our treatment conditions. Like, for example, class, kung hindi ka sure about the requirements or the characteristic of your participants, okay, you go on with the quasi-experimental. Kasi kung hindi ka sure, ibig sabihin you don't have any 100% control over your subject. And number 2 is kapag merong pre-existing characteristic yung iyong mga subjects like gender, educational background, so on and so forth, na it's impossible for them to regroup. So, you go in quasi-experimental study. Yun. Next class. More on experiments and quasi-experiment. An experiment is a study in which the researcher manipulates the level of some independent variable and then measures the outcome. Experiments are powerful techniques for evaluating cause and effect relationship. Many researchers consider experiments the gold standard against which all the other research designs should be judged. Experiments are conducted both in the laboratory and real-life situations. Both sa kanilang dalawa. Experiments and quasi-experiments. Just that sa quasi ay hindi talaga ganun ka-control yung ating independent variable. And class, in experimental study kasi laging may experiment group at saka control group at nararandomize yung ating participants. In quasi-experiment, pwede nating ma-randomize yung ating participants. Okay? Pero pwedeng meron or pwedeng walang control groups since meron tayong pre-existing characteristics. Next, eto na yung sinasabi ko kanina. So, we have the true experiments, we have the quasi-experiments. The purpose of both is to examine the cause of certain phenomena. In true experiments, in which all the important factors that might affect the phenomena of interest are completely controlled, are the preferred design. Often, however, it is not possible or practical to control all the key factors, so it becomes necessary to implement a quasi-experimental research design. Ito yung pinaliwanag ko sa inyo kanina, class. So, what are some of the similarities between true and quasi-experiment? Study participants are subjective to some type of treatment or condition. Pareha silang merong treatment condition. Balikan niyo yung ginawa natin during yung psychological statistics, okay, about the treatment condition. Some outcome of interest is measured, which is the dependent variable. The researchers test whether differences in this outcome are related to the treatment. So, for example, in true experiment, the effect of music in reading comprehension of first-year students. We have the experimental group, the group which will be listening to music, and then we have the control group, which is the group which will not listen to any music, and then after that, they're going to measure their reading comprehension. So, as you could see here, class, yung XP group, usually sila yung nakaka-receive ng treatment condition. And yung control group, sila yung hindi nakaka-receive ng treatment condition. So, meron siyang treatment condition. And then, yung outcome pwedeng ma-measure. In quasi-experiment, for example, the topic is the effect of teaching style on reading comprehension of first-year male and female students. So, in experimental group, meron tayong treatment condition na pwedeng yung teaching style is actually number 1, authoritative, and then number 2, permissive. Kung makikita nyo, yung control group niya is pwedeng neutral. Hindi authoritative, hindi permissive. Andun siya sa gitna or nandun siya sa average. Meron din siyang control group. Pero, in true experiment, it is a must that there should be a control group because we are looking on the causes and effect. But in quasi-experiment, pwedeng wala siyang control group since ang ating priority is just to see the differences among variables. Differences, like for example, in our example, difference ng authoritative sa permissive na teaching style. Okay? And its effect to the reading comprehension of the first-year male and female students. How about the differences between true experiment and quasi-experiment? In a true experiment, participants are randomly assigned to either the treatment or the control group, whereas they are not assigned randomly in quasi-experiment. Eto, klaseng sinasabi ko sa inyo kanina na in true experiment, you could actually manipulate in the independent variable by assigning them whether eto ba ay mapupunta in XP group na makikinig ng music or eto ba ay mapupunta sa control group na walang music na maririnig. But in quasi-experiment class, okay, wala kang total manipulation of independent variable because some of your participants are actually meron siyang pre-existing characteristic. Like for example, hindi mo pwedeng ilagay yung participants mo na authoritative sa permissive kasi yun yung talaga yung characteristic nila. Yung permissive, hindi mo pwedeng ilagay sa authoritative because they have their own pre-existing characteristics. And also sa quasi-experiment class, another example is yung yung gender. For example, the effect of gender in reading comprehension. Hindi mo pwedeng i-assign yung babae dun sa lalaki or yung lalaki dun sa babae. So, wala kang 100% freedom or liberty to assign them in treatment condition. So, yun yung pinakamalinaw na pagkakaiba. Number 2, in a quasi-experiment, the control and treatment groups differ not only in terms of the experimental treatment they receive, but also in other, often unknown or unknowable ways. Thus, the researcher must try to statistically control for as many of these differences as possible. Ito yung ginagawa natin na in experimental study, malalaman nyo when we conduct it na meron tayong mga criteria in terms of getting our participants, kasi we wanted na as much as possible they have the same characteristics. Like for example, kung gusto mo mga first year students lang, or kung gusto mo mga second year students lang, so meron ka talagang certain characteristics kasi mas specify yung requirements mo or criteria mo sa pagpili ng respondents, mas makaka-assure ka na yung magiging resulta is actually the cause of a certain scenario or behavior. Because control is lacking in a quasi-experiments, there may be several rival hypotheses competing with experimental manipulation as explanation for observed results. So, yun po yung nangyayari. So, in any way, since kayo naman po ay mga undergraduate students pa lamang, it's really convenient for us to use the quasi-experiment kasi we're just also practicing and we're just testing yung mga human behavior. And class, mind you, mostly naman tong mga true experiment ginagamit ito into creating or discovering new medicines for a certain illness, because they really wanted to sure na yung nakakagamot sa isang bagay is actually this kind of drugs or this kind of chemicals. So, parang ganon yung nangyayari dito between true experiment and quasi-experiment. Okay? So, here are the key components of experimental research design. The manipulation of predictor variables. Sabi dito, in an experiment, the researcher manipulates the factor that is hypothesized to affect the outcome of interest. The factor that is being manipulated is typically referred to as the treatment or intervention. The researcher may manipulate whether research subjects receive a treatment and the level of treatment. So, ang ipinapakita dito, class, katulad nga ng sinabi ko kanina, kapag through experimental research design, you have this liberty to assign different treatment condition to your subject. Pwede ka makapamili. Okay? Example, a group of researchers was interested in the causes of maternal employment. They might hypothesize that the provision of government-subsidized child care would promote such employment. They could then design an experiment in which some subjects would be provided the options of government funded childcare subsidies and other would not. The researchers might also manipulate the value of the childcare subsidies in order to determine if higher subsidy values might result in different levels of maternal employment. They could actually design para malaman nila if ang cost ba ng pagtaas ng maternal employment is actually the benefit na makukuha nila in terms of childcare. So, ang gagawin nila, pwedeng sa treatment condition 1, ganito yung mga benefits. Siguro mga 5 yung benefits. Sa treatment condition 2, 3 lang. And then sa treatment condition 1, 1 lang. So, titingnan nila how many maternal employee or applicant yung mag-a-apply. Syempre, kung maraming mag-a-apply doon sa 5 yung benefits, you could actually assume and said na kaya maraming nag-apply dito kasi yung mga benefits mas madami, 5. Kaya na-identify mo, kaya marami pala dito kasi 5 yung benefits as compared dun sa isa lang yung benefits na kukonti lang yung nag-apply. So the manipulation of those independent variable could actually predict an outcome. Okay? What else? Random assignment. Study participants are randomly assigned to different treatment groups. I remember discussing with you class yung difference ng sampling technique at saka ng random assignment. Tandaan po natin na ang sampling technique is ginagawa natin kapag kukuha po tayo ng ating mga respondents. But for example, nakuha na natin yung tamang bilang ng mga respondents natin and we're doing an experimental study. That is the time that we're going to do the random assignment, because in random assignment, our goal is to actually assign our participants to different treatment conditions fairly. Okay? Na lahat sila may chance na mapapunta dun sa treatment condition na yon. Whereas kapag sinabi nating sampling technique, we are just making sure that we get the right participants for our study. Okay? Number 3, participants are assigned to either the group that receives the treatment, known as the experimental group, or treatment group, or yung group na hindi makaka-receive ng treatment or makaka-receive lang ng placebo, we call that as the control group. Tandaan ulit, sa true experiment, merong control group dapat at merong total manipulation of the independent variable at merong randomization. Pero sa quasi-experimental group, pwedeng walang control group. At hindi talaga wala tayong total control sa independent variable at pwedeng hindi din tayo makapag-random assignment kasi nga merong mga pre-existing characteristics. So, random assignment neutralizes factors other than the independent variables, making it possible to directly infer cause and effect. Random sampling, okay? Alam na natin, experimental researchers have used convenience sampling to select study participants. Especially sa mga experimental study, kung meron na kayong pre-existing characteristic. Okay? Ang gusto nyo lang malaman is specific, therefore convenience sampling yung gagamitin natin. However, as research methods have become more rigorous and the problems with generalizing from a convenience sample to the larger population have become more apparent, experimental researchers are increasingly turning to random sampling. In experimental policy research studies, participants are often randomly selected from program administrative databases. So, pag sinabing program administrative databases, usually this kind of sampling, random sampling is actually systematic to the control or treatment group para nga naman fair class. Okay. Tatandaan po natin class na ang convenience sampling ginagamit sa qualitative or sa non-probability. Pero tandaan nyo din ang experimental studies actually at quantitative at dapat probability sampling ang ginagamit. Kaya nga naging controversy ito kasi nga convenience is not really suitable for experimental. Therefore, dun tayo sa systematic. Internal validity. Ano po yung internal validity? When an experiment is internally valid, we are certain that the independent variable caused the outcome of the study. Kapag ang isang ang nilagay natin na independent variable is yung naging cause ng behavior ng participants natin, ibig sabihin, mataas yung internal validity nung ating research design. For example, if after this experiment, tinanong mo yung mga maternal employee na, oh, bakit ka nag-apply dito? Kapag sumagot sila na kasi maraming benefits, ibig sabihin, mataas yung internal validity nung iyong research design. Pero kung i-interview mo sila at sinabi mo, oh, ba't ka nag-apply dito? Kasi mataas yung sweldo. So, when they say mataas ang sweldo, ibig sabihin, your research study has a very low internal validity because yung behavior nila, which is mag-apply sa trabaho, is hindi yung inaasahan mong magiging sagot nila. So, yung mataas na sweldo, instead na siya yung iyong Instead na yun yung naging dahilan kung bakit siya nag-apply, yung mataas na sweldo is actually what we call the confounding variable. So, nakagulo lang siya. So, by this means, bukod sa hindi successful yung iyong research study, ibig sabihin, mababa din yung internal validity ng iyong study because you failed to actually use your independent variable, which is yung mga childcare subsidies sana or yung benefits. Nakuha, class? Okay, when the subjects are randomly assigned to treatment or control groups, we can assume that the independent variable caused the observed outcomes because the two groups should not have differed from one another at the start of the experiment. So, dun din sa internal validity, dapat maingat ka din with your subjects. You have to make sure that your subjects has similar characteristics. Like, for example, hindi pwedeng maternal employee yun na yung participants mo. Malay mo, merong maternal employee pero 5 na pala yung anak, maternal employee tapos isa lang yung anak. So, syempre, even though malaki yung magiging benefits noon, pwedeng may choice yung maternal employee na isa pa lang yung anak na i-decline yung mga benefits na yun kasi kaya pa naman yung buhayin yung sarili niya. Whereas yung maternal employee na meron ng 5 anak, pwedeng i-accept niya na lang kasi in her case na 5 na yung anak, ano pa nga ba yung aayawan niya kung maraming benefits? So, yun class, pwedeng maging confounding variable din yun. That is why you have to make sure that your participants are at least very much similar with one another. Okay? Internal validity, moreover, one potential threat to internal validity in experiments, of course, when participants either drop out of the study or refuse to participate in the study. Ito na nga, class, yung pinakamalaking problema ng mga experimental study. We have learned in our informed consent, yung research ethics natin, na our participants really have the right to withdraw from participating in our research study before, during, and after the experiment. And when they drop out, it could actually become a threat in our internal validity because mawawalan tayo ng source ng data or information to make an accurate conclusion. So, this dropping out or refusal of our participants to participate more is what we call the differential attrition, which is a threat again in our internal validity. For example, suppose an experiment was conducted to assess the effects of a new reading curriculum. If the new curriculum was so tough that many of the slowest readers dropped out of the school with the new curriculum would experience an increase in the average reading scores. The reason is not because of the new curriculum, but it is because yung mga slowest readers, natakot na sila, nag-back out na sila. Kaya ang natira na lang yung mga average. So, therefore, basically, ang makukuha nila is matataas na scores because wala na yung makakapagbigay ng mga mabababang scores. Natakot na sila, nag-back out na sila. So the reason they experience an increase in reading scores, however, is because the worst readers left the school, not because the new curriculum improved students' reading skills. In this case, worst readers that left the school becomes our confounding variable. Nawala na yung independent variable natin na the new curriculum, class. Next, external validity. Again, tulad ng binanggit ko dati-rati pa, when we say external validity, it refers to the ability of our research to generalize the result to majority of our participants. Okay? It can be very difficult to generalize experimental results to groups that were not included in the study. Why? Because of the nature of the experimental research study na we really need to make treatment condition. It's really impossible for us to get as much as much participants na marami yung gusto natin para makuha natin yung same result, hindi natin kaya because magiging magastos and also time consuming. And because of that, we cannot really said na yung resulta nitong experiment na ito um could actually represent all the people which has a similar characteristics. Studies that randomly select participants from the most diverse and representative populations are more likely to have external validity. The use of random sampling techniques makes it easier to generalize the result of studies to other groups. Kaya nga, class, it's very important na before ka gumawa ng kahit na anong research design or na experimental research designs, you have to make sure that the participants that you get is actually representing the whole population because if not, magsasuffer yung research study because mahihirapan tayong i-prove that our study is really valid kung kukunti lang yung kinuha nating respondents or subject. That is why sa experimental research design talaga importante yung pagsiset ng mga criteria. Okay? These are the characteristics that we need for our participants and you have to really be mindful about that. Or else, again, magkakaroon ng confounding variable, magfa-fail yung iyong research study. Kuha class, again, external validity, it talks about the ability of your research to generalize the result for the whole population that you are studying, whereas when we say internal validity, it is actually the accuracy that you are really measuring what you really wanted to measure. Na yung outcome ng study mo is actually the effect or the cause nung independent variable mo na makukuha mo kapag in-interview mo sila. Okay. Pinag-aralan natin yung ethics kasi yung ethics is very much important in doing experimental research design. Now, we cannot really go on with our experiments kapag na-violate niya yung ethics, especially if na-violate yung human rights and also protection of our participants. Again, beneficence. Above all things, we should not harm our participants, even animals. It is particularly important in experimental research to follow ethical guidelines. Protecting the health and safety of research subject is imperative. Okay, clear yon. In order to assure subject safety, all researchers should have their project reviewed by the Institutional Review Board. So, the National Institutes of Health supplies strict guidelines for project approval. I told you the San Beda College, Alabang is actually creating this research ethics review board, which your experiment would be reviewed by these professionals before you proceed to ensure that we are not harming any human participants. So, if it's really harmful, wala tayong magagawa kundi magkaroon ng correlational study or to look for a lighter or less harmful activities for our participants. So, this is just a review. These are the basic of ethical principle. 1, respect for person. 2, beneficence. 3, justice. So, kulang to kasi we are actually having 5, but we are all knowledgeable about this basic ethical principle. So, hindi na sana tayo magkakamali. Advantages and disadvantages of experimental design. Advantages, the environment in which the research takes place can often be carefully controlled. For instance, in laboratory. And it is easier to estimate the true effect of the variable of interest on the outcome of interest kung gagamitin mo ito sa kanilang natural environment. Again, class, we could actually conduct our experiment in a laboratory or on their natural environment. However, the disadvantages would be it's often difficult to assure the external validity of the experiment because sa sobrang kailangan mong i-manipulate or control or nakafocus ka dun sa experiment mo, you cannot have as many participants that you wanted. So, kung kukonti naman, syempre, hindi mo naman ma-generalize siya with the whole population. And so, class, dun nagtatapos ang ating lecture with regards to correlational study. Experimental research design, may dalawang types, quasi-experimental design, and then we have the true experimental design. Lagi nyo lang po tatandaan, class, that dito ipiniliwanag sa lecture na to na ethics should be above all, na kapag it violates the rights of our human subjects and animal subjects, okay, we opt to do the correlational study muna. Okay? Or if you really wanted to pursue experimental study, might as well review your research ethics guidelines and then lessen the harm, or as much as possible, walang harm dapat against person or animals. And then in terms of true experimental design and quasi-experimental design, ang true experimental design ay merong 100% control over the independent variable or the treatment conditions. Meron siyang randomization. Pwede mong ma-randomize ang iyong mga participants in your treatment conditions. What else? This is actually leading to identification of the cause and effect. But class, may mga times that we cannot be sure of a control over our participants, or meron tayong mga gustong pag-aralan na meron ng pre-existing characteristics. So therefore, if that happens, we opt to use the quasi-experimental research design, which is commonly used by the students like you in research project like this one, which is when we say quasi-experimental design, you can have your experimental group, but pwedeng meron or pwedeng walang control group. And then, pwedeng hindi ka din makapag-randomize kasi nga merong pre-existing characteristic katulad ng gender o kaya ng kanilang other characteristics. So, yun yung mga kailangan yung tatandaan. Okay, class? And then, please do this activity 1. Ito. Sabi dito, decide if the following researcher should be done using a correlational study or an experimental study. We do this orally. I will give you 3 minutes to think and we will answer these questions. So, your 3 minutes, class, starts now. Number 1, are people who were abused as children more likely than others to become child abusers? What type of study would be used to research this question? Number 2, a school psychologist wondered whether students would perform better on tests when listening to music. When can we use correlational study? In number 1 or in number 2? And where do we use experimental study? In number 1 or number 2? Okay. You could use scratch paper in order to jot down your answer. So, think carefully. Two minutes. One minute. Okay, class? Di naman mahiwaga yung answer dito. You just have to remember the characteristic of a correlational study and the experimental study as mentioned or emphasized in our lecture. Okay, let us have the answer. What is your answer for number 1? Okay, the correct answer in number 1, this should be done using the correlational study. Okay, so if you are correct, okay, bigyan ng palakpakan sarili nyo. Bakit siya correlational study? Because it might violate the ethical principle guidelines if you're going to pursue with experimental study, because we're talking about abused children. So we cannot really force them to do activities like, for example, to remember all the things that they have gone through, the abusive thoughts and memories, in order to get the data or the outcome that we are looking for. No, hindi natin kailangang maging dahilan para magkaroon pa sila ulit ng makaramdam sila ng trauma or whatsoever. Number 2 is actually an experimental study, because we could actually design, okay, an experiment here. Anong design ang pwede dito? Between or within? Okay, pwedeng between, pwedeng within, but this kind of experiment is actually harmless. Okay? Hindi siya ganong ka-harmful as compared dun sa ating abusive dun sa number 1. Okay, guys? And then continue po in our activity 2. Write the correct letter of your answer and explain it in one paragraph. For this activity, pwede kayong magsulat sa bond paper, soft copy sa inyong mga computers, or kung wala kayong computer, sa yellow paper, bond paper, picturean nyo, attach nyo dun sa LMS natin. So number 2, ganun din po, answer and then explain. And then activity number 3, answer and then explain. Answer the following in one paragraph. So meron kayong 1, 2, meron kayong 5 paragraph, tapos 6 dito, and then 7. Meron kayong 7 paragraph na gagawin. Again, you have 1 week to finish this activity. Thank you, guys.